Welcome to the Data Strategy Show. My name's Samir Sharma and I'll be your host for the next 60 minutes. My guest today is Kathleen Maley. She's a business leader specializing in the science of data and analytics. Kathleen's got more than 15 years of experience and she helps her business partners achieve outsized business value through the practical application of analytical techniques. Kathleen started her career on the leading edge of a revolution in database decision-making at the Bank of America. She built predictive models, ran a model risk management group, and led several business analytics verticals. In her culminating role as the bank's consumer deposits pricing executive, she transformed the business from an intuition-based to predictive model-based, creating an efficiency of 65 million per basis point saved. As the head of consumer and digital analytics at KeyBank, Kathleen increased the economic impact of her team by elevating their role from data provider to strategic partner. She established a discipline for measuring realized benefit of analytically informed business initiatives and engineered a shift toward collaboration, ensuring analytical solutions are developed hand in hand with business execution plans. Kathleen is also a member of the International Institute for Analytics Expert Network, board member and volunteer statistician for the Turner Syndrome Society of the United States, published writer and frequent speaker. She holds degrees in mathematics and applied statistics. Previously, Kathleen taught high school mathematics and statistics in Costa Rica, Mexico, and China. I hope you enjoy this episode and please do leave your comments. Thank you. Kathleen Maley, welcome to the Data Strategy Show. It's such a great pleasure to have you on the show today. Listen, Kathleen, for the viewers, why don't you just give us a little bit about your background and then we'll get straight into it.
Okay, sure. I'll go all the way back. I started actually as a high school math teacher.
Wonderful.
And I loved it. I stumbled onto statistics. I was asked to teach it. Fell in love with it, went back to graduate school. And then I said, well, am I going to keep teaching or do I want to use this degree I just learned? And I accidentally found myself working in finance, doing risk modeling, credit risk decisioning modeling. Did that for a long time, moved into business analytics, absolutely fell in love with this space. The more I learned about how to actually do the job in an effective way, the more excited I got about doing it. And that's what I've been doing ever since. We're going to look back. I love it.
So, there's so much there. From being a maths teacher to where you are now, it obviously makes sense to me because, math, statistics, but, what I really want to understand is that you've come from obviously the school, being a school teacher is not an easy thing to do. I know, but then going into the statistics based and then getting what you just said, a love of business analytics. How did that love of business analytics, how did that emerge? What made you realize one day, I love this stuff, and boom, I'm going to do it. What was what changed? And essentially, what was your journey to that data moment, that epiphany?
It really was a moment in time. I was doing predictive modeling, and I still love predictive modeling. It's very, very useful. But I was asked to take a business analytics role, and there was one project that I was asked to work on. An executive came to me and said, Kathleen, I've done this thing to improve client experience in my call centers. I need you to get me the data that shows that client experience has increased as a result of that. And that was a pivotal moment. Up until then, I had done what most analysts are trained to do. Hey, Kathleen, can you get me this data? Sure, here's your data.
Yep.
But he set off just something a little bit different. I got very curious and I thought, well, what did you do? Why did you do it? How do you know that that is the reason anything changed? How do you actually know that something changed? I had the curiosity. I had the ability to ask the questions. I also had a manager, a very, very effective manager who helped me navigate that situation in a very diplomatic way.
Okay.
The first time I did it. And what happened was I did all of the exploratory analysis we do, and I ended up with a picture, literally a picture of a graph that showed, okay, for the call center that had these changes made, we saw client experience do something like this. What you would expect,
Okay.
right?
Yeah. Yep.
And for the call center that didn't get the change, we saw the client experience scores were straight flat. And I
Right.
looked at that, and my boss and I looked at it together, and we said, we've done everything right. We've uncovered every rock. And it must be true. And I said, it must be true, except that I don't believe it. And I had one final epiphany, one final thought, which was, we're looking at this data all wrong. We're looking at it in terms of the clients who went to the call centers.
Mm-hmm.
We're not looking at it in terms of the call center agents who were working the call centers. We flipped the data upside down. And all of a sudden, a totally new picture emerged.
Mm-hmm.
For the contact center agents who were selected for that preferred gate, their scores were always higher.
Okay.
And for the contact center agents who were where they'd always been,
yes,
the scores were exactly what, and it was like, oh my gosh. And the reason it mattered, first of all, I got that jolt of excitement, like, oh my gosh, I know what's happening. It was like it's solving a logic puzzle. But the other reason it was really important is because those changes that were made to prepare those call center agents cost about $7 million.
Wow.
They were totally unnecessary.
Oh my goodness.
So as this executive was thinking about expanding this very successful gate and getting ready to spend more money, we were able to go to him. I was able to go to him again with a manager who helped me do this very diplomatically to say, don't spend any more money. Here's the real root cause of your success.
Right.
Let's capitalize on this information and let's grow the gate in a different way than you had expected to do so. So there was the personal satisfaction. There was just the enjoyment of solving the problem.
Sure.
And there was the ability to actually approach a leader in a way that allowed him to receive this information in a productive way so that he could make a different, better decision for the agents, for the clients, and for the company overall.
The company. Wonderful. So there's a lot that you've just mentioned in that. And it's very interesting for me because where you had that epiphany moment of flipping the data, you mentioned the word curiosity. Now, as an analyst, and I'm assuming at that point you were a data analyst or just I know you talk about business analytics, but as a data analyst, it's one of the fundamentals in terms of being curious. And then you talked about asking the question, and then you talked about supplying, or at least providing the leader with a different way of looking at that data. So let's unpack those three things, because in my mind, it sounds like that's the archetypal way an analyst should tackle a problem. And day in, day out, I see that in many companies that's not the case, that there's hesitation to be curious. There's the hesitation to uncover the right questions, and then the hesitation to prove the value and look at the data differently and not deliver the message as per what your business partner wants. So you've just talked about it so easily. And I'd really like to uncover the layers in those dimensions, because I think a lot of data analysts are stuck in those positions of how on earth do I convey information? How on earth do I ask the right questions? How am I looking at the data? So let's explore it from when you had that epiphany to, you must have started to lay down the sort of framework for how you would move forward. So let's unpack those in those three specific buckets, because I think that's important for certainly those data analysts to understand how to move forward. In fact, any kind of analyst, whether it's a business analyst or a data analyst or a data scientist, you are talking about a fundamental framework that should exist across any role. Yes. Because ultimately it's about decision making
and critical thinking. It's
correct. Yeah. So for me, I'd really like to hear from your point of view what you started when you had that curious moment. What were the things that you did? Maybe the top three things, and then how you were able to go back to your business partner and say, okay, I want to do it differently, because that's also a mindset change. So sorry,
Yes.
I'm going to stop talking and let you,
All right. Okay. And you're right. There's so much in
there
there.
is.
And I want to start with the word that you pulled on, the hesitancy. Where does that
Right.
hesitancy come from? And I think it comes from a few different places. Number one, nobody's trained to do the job that I've learned how to do.
Yeah.
We're taught the statistics, which is absolutely essential. We're taught some algorithms, absolutely essential. We're taught some programming language, absolutely essential. We're never taught how to do the job.
Right.
So I've learned so much through trial and error. And in the beginning, that framework was totally subconscious. It was sort of like, ooh, I put my hand on the stove and it burned. I'm not going to do it that way again.
Sure.
I was also lucky enough to have that manager.
Right.
And we're still in touch. He is still a mentor of mine.
Wow.
Because he was able to articulate some of these things that I was discovering. So that's one. We're not taught how to do it. The other is, in fact, I think bad behavior is often reinforced. And what I mean by that is business leaders who also don't know how to do the analytics job effectively have a need. And they communicate that need in terms of, this is the data I need. And the analysts who get them that data quickly are praised for it.
Right. Yep.
But getting data isn't really that helpful.
No.
So how do you decide, okay, I know that this data is what this guy's asking for. I know if I give it to him, he'll be happy. But I also know it's useless, and all he's going to do is come back and ask for another cut. Can you cut it this way? Can you cut it that way?
Yep.
Right? I don't know what he's working on, and he doesn't know what to ask for because this isn't his specialty. It becomes a cycle. So, so it was that combination. The curiosity is tough. I don't know. For me, that's just in me. When I look at data, there's this thing in me that says, ooh, that looks weird. Something's weird. I need to understand that better. And so I don't know where that comes from, that natural curiosity. I don't know how to give that to somebody else. What I do know how to do is how to ask questions differently.
Right.
So in the beginning, I discovered that having context led to a completely different outcome. It led to me loving my job, number one, and number two, being useful. Yep. The start of being useful. And so it was about gathering context. How do I gather context? In the beginning, I would say, well, business partner, tell me what you're trying to do. Tell me what decision you're going to make. Tell me why this matters.
Right.
Literally in that language, all of which feels very confrontational.
Yes. Yes.
And so the response was naturally a defensive response. I know my job. I know my business. I know what I need. Just give me what I want. And so how would I get myself out of that cycle? And then one day I stumbled across a phrase: help me understand what you're trying to achieve so I can better meet your needs.
Fantastic.
And it
Brilliant.
says everything.
The drawbridge opened and the birds were singing.
It was magical. And I use that phrase to this day. And I teach my analysts, this is what you're trying to communicate. What you want is to be able to help. And in order to do that, you've got to know some context.
Sure.
And it has been one of the most useful phrases that I've held on to throughout my career. So that's the first thing. And that is all about building relationships, starting a dialogue.
Yes.
I didn't have a little cheat sheet, a one-pager that has, 10 or 12 starter questions.
Right.
Because once you're in a conversation, and that's what this curiosity piece is, the asking of the questions, understanding the business context. It's a conversation. Well, tell me about this, and tell me about this, and why this, and what did you expect? So I have a list of starter questions, but usually once a conversation gets going, now you're two people having a conversation. Almost anybody can keep that dialogue going if they're both open and so that is a great and effective way to start. So that's sort of the curiosity, the understanding, the context, making sure I'm approaching these people with and communicating my intention with the right language. Help me understand what you're trying to achieve so I can better meet your needs.
Perfect.
So what was the second layer of that? You have to remind me.
Well, the second layer was, you've just literally sort of segued into from the curiosity bit, from the hesitancy into the asking questions. So I think that was the bit which you talked about, and then I was able to ask better questions. And I think that's the dialogue you just spoke about. So it's really, and I think these are the types of things that I stumbled across about eight or 9 years ago. And I think that's why you and I started speaking around it, because some of the frameworks that I've put together over my experience is literally about, taking your question, but actually putting it into a canvas and being able to ask the questions in a more softer manner and saying, listen, I know that you've got your objectives to get to. I know that might be growth. It might be, it might be growing customers by X% or whatever it is, but how can I help you do that? And actually, if I knew what you were trying to achieve and what you need to do in terms of decisions that you need to make on a daily basis, and what questions you are asking yourself, but you can't quite figure them out because maybe, we need to understand the right questions you're asking and how that's going to, have a multiple effect for those decisions. And then we can look at all the data stuff and algorithms and blah, 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 because those things are there. That doesn't matter. It's fundamentally getting that bit right.
That is such a great point, because I find that not only do I gain context when I'm in dialogue with the partner I'm supporting, somehow articulating their own thoughts helps them refine, helps them come up with new questions, help them say, oh, well, actually, so it evolves the question even. It isn't just one-sided.
Yes.
They are thinking out loud. They are evolving their own question. It's useful. Now, they don't have to be doing that with me. They could be doing that with any other person, but because it's specific to now, how will the data help me answer this? That's where I can come in. That's the unique piece that I bring. There was one other thing I wanted you made me think of as you were talking about that, related to the hesitancy, but also related to the dialogue. There is psychology to this as well. And so many of my analysts believe that they are almost in a subservient position.
Right. Okay.
And I have to remind them and help them build their confidence, just as I had to. You need to meet your partner as an equal at the table. You are. You don't know their business, and you don't have the same pressures sitting on your shoulder, but you are the data expert. You are the analytics expert. They need your expertise. If you do not share with them how the analytics can help them solve their problems, you are not doing your job. Your job is not to sit quietly until called on. Children should be seen and not heard.
Yes. Yeah. No. Absolutely.
No. You've got to really stand in your own value, appreciate your own value, and meet your partner as an equal at the table. That leads to much, much more productive dialogue. And it ends up, again, being much more fulfilling for the analyst, much more valuable for the business partner.
And I think there's two things I take away from the first bit you said. One is language. And that's an important factor here. How we frame data problems or data talk into a business language is important, because so many times I've been sitting in meetings where one of the analysts in my team will get carried away talking about, I don't know, classification algorithm. And I'm looking at them thinking, why are you speaking about classification algorithm to a guy who doesn't even know what that means? So that language is hugely important. And it's something that, I continuously check myself, literally every day. Am I stating the right thing in terms of what my business partner, my client, but my business partner, essentially that's what I see them as. Do they understand me? Because the minute they give me a blank look, I know I've gone back to data speak.
Right.
The second thing is, which I think was hugely important, and it is the 12 or 13 or however many questions you've got. But fundamentally, what I heard in what you had mentioned was asking why. And I believe that a lot of analysts don't ask why. And it goes to your subservience. It's like, of course I can give you the data. Yes, I can give you any output you want. I can put it in a row and a column, and I can do this and I can that, and I can give it to you in a visual. I can do whatever you want. Just tell me. And and that is the sort of reactive approach. But I think asking, why would you do it that way? How is that going to benefit what you're going to do for the future, is what I got from what you said. And I'm sure those are your questions. I'm sure they are. You know, so that's important. But I want to pick up on something that you mentioned earlier, about building teams, building analytical teams. And no doubt in your career, and I know that you've worked hugely in the banking industry, creating analytical teams in an environment which is fast-paced, which expects results, which needs to grow and understand customers and so on. How, as a leader in that position, do you nurture and create a very good environment? And you use the word mentorship or mentoring. How do you take analysts who are subservient? I know you talked about it. How do you make them into those amazing analysts and build a team that can respond in a proactive manner?
Yeah. I pull on the skills I learned as a teacher, for one.
Okay.
Right. And I approach it as, this is about education. I know what I learned in school, which was a lot about the statistics, the algorithms, the programming, nothing about how to do the job. So that's the first thing. Like, guys, no one's ever talked to you about a different way. You had to figure it out on your own. I'm here to tell you. So first of all, let's redefine your job. Okay. Your job is no longer to go and get the data.
Yep.
So let that sit for a minute. Your job is no longer to go and get the data. This is what your job is. And I define a new job for them.
Right. And
the first rule I put into place, and I'm not big on rules. I mean, every situation is different.
You're an ex-teacher. Of course, there's rules.
But I say, okay, there's one rule. If somebody calls you and asks you for data, and this is from day one, if somebody calls you and asks you for data, you are not allowed to say yes. Okay. Okay, that's terrifying. And then I say, but you're not allowed to say no. And they go, okay, now that's even worse, because you've left me no choice. I'm
sitting on the fence. Yeah.
No idea what to do. And that's where, help me understand what you're trying to achieve.
Of course. Yeah.
But what I tell them is, I don't care if you have to pretend you're losing connection on your phone and you hang up on them and you call me immediately and you say, I don't know what to do, I'm panicking. I said, you get a gold star for doing that. If you call me and say, I don't know what to do, I'm panicking, you get a gold star, because this is about changing muscle memory. This is about changing habits. Let me model a new way of doing it for you. Let me help you through that. And it can be, frankly, time intensive, but that's my job as a leader.
Sure.
That's my job as a leader. And, different people pick up on it at a different speed. And then those people help me proliferate it through. I talk to the business leaders and I say, we're going to start doing things differently. Here's what you're going to expect. Can you please be open to this and work with me? And know they're not going to get it right the first time, and just stick with me. Trust me, it's going to get better. I tell my analysts, try it. You're going to screw it up. That's okay. Call me. We'll fix it together. Yes. But you got to start, it's just, they say there's an expression, suck at something new. Anytime you do something for the first time, it's horrible. It's so hard.
It is, yes.
You gotta keep doing it. You gotta keep doing it. So it's about creating a safe space. It's about putting in the time. It's about literally giving individuals a new set of tools. I have built some of my own training that I use, because I can teach one person at a time, or I can give a primer to 30 at once. I think it's about the safe space. Guys, this is new, this is different, and explicit. Creating a safe space and being explicit and saying, this is what we're going to do from now on. And really being serious about that. So when somebody comes and says, hey, I tried this and it went really sideways, congratulate them. You tried. Now, eventually, people they've got to be able to transition to a new way of working.
Sure.
But in the beginning, really celebrating the attempt more so than the outcome. And then as people start to see and feel a new way and a new outcome, it begins to self-perpetuate. And I love doing it. I love doing it, because I think these people with this skill set are uniquely positioned to create incredible value. I think about when I was running deposits pricing for one of the larger banks I worked for, we implemented price elasticity and optimization models so that we could actually manage deposits rate paid at the portfolio level. 1 basis point was worth $65 million.
Wow.
That's a lot of value.
Wow.
That was a big, expensive project. But I think about a smaller project I did at one of the other companies I've worked for. And I would say that took me, I directed quite a lot of this myself. About 6 weeks of exploratory analysis, about 2 weeks of creating a decisioning algorithm. Now to implement it, this was a call center, call routing strategy. So to implement it was about 3 months.
Okay.
New scripts, finding the right people, setting up the gate, pilot, making sure everything's working. But, our section was about 2 months, 3 months to implement. But, it was worth about $6 million a year, which was a 20-fold return on investment.
Wow.
There was no technology involved. It was just people hours. And, a 20-fold return on investment, that's significant. That is significant.
That is huge. But, you said an interesting thing there. There was no technology involved. But then you talked about building algorithms and putting it into production. And so take me through that, because many people in the business world think that you have to have shiny new things and toys in order to build algorithms and wonderful, tools like that. But it sounds like you've done it without even having to invest and buy and just use people time. So
that's right.
I'm really curious about that, because that's something that I admire and certainly advocate for.
Yeah. And there's certainly a place for it. I mean, in the larger project I was talking about, there was significant technology investment. But in this smaller one, the exploratory analytics can be done locally on a server. We're just, looking at the data and creating some charts and graphs and studying that data and figuring out what's right. An algorithm is just a statement in, I can't remember if we did it in R or Python or SAS, or it doesn't matter. But we already had the technology required for routing calls. Calls were already being routed.
Of course. Yeah.
So all it meant was, instead of using this set of business rules to route calls, we've done a slightly more sophisticated set of business rules with a very specific purpose. We can install that in the existing platform, on the existing platform, and it's just like any other call routing strategy. I think the best analytical solutions become completely transparent to almost everybody involved. Those call center agents had no idea there was this new algorithm. They just knew, okay, these are the calls I'm taking today. They didn't need to know any more than that. So good analytical solutions that that actually create value become embedded in the business, become part of the fabric of the business, and are largely transparent to most people involved.
I agree with you. And I think that is testament to the fact that analysts or data scientists, or whichever position you're in, should start looking for the simplest method to implement.
Parsimony. Parsimony is our rule.
Yeah. I often see the most complex algorithms being written only to be never to be used, when in fact it could have been done simply. And to your point, the algorithms are lying around. They've been lying around since the 40s and 50s. There's nothing new about it. You did statistics. You were using many of the same principles. The technology has given us a way to crunch data and effectively manage those algorithms in a faster throughput process, which is great. But it's that, we don't need to do that. And that's what I love about that example that you gave. One, it's transparent. 2, nobody knows it's happening in the background. And 3, you use the simplest method you could find at the lowest cost with the most impact.
That's my job. That's my job.
That's
my
wonderful.
job. Everything I do is return on investment. And this is something else I talk to my team about. Guys, think about your time. Your time is precious.
Yes.
Think about every single minute. What is the return on investment? You're working on this thing that this guy asked for, and it's going nowhere, but you're still working on it. Meanwhile, you've got this other thing over here that we know is worth a ton. and you're not finding time for it because somebody just called you this morning and asked for this.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
That's irresponsible.
Mm-hmm.
It's irresponsible. Return on investment and your time is valuable.
So let me ask you about that, because ROI is probably one of the biggest things that people discuss in our world, in particular, the investment into technology and platforms. And, you know, you talked about time, and people's time is valuable. So when you're quantifying that, where do you start in terms of quantifying the ROI? And how do you prove the value downstream to your business partners? And how do you make sure that somebody who's an analyst who's never done ROI before, how do you enable them to do that? I often get asked this question myself, so I'm really curious to see how you do it. And I'll be taking copious notes, no doubt.
So I have to start by saying I'm an applied statistician.
Okay.
So what that means is I'm not a purist.
Okay.
And I'm not above getting in the mud and the muck and rolling around a little to make it work.
Mm-hmm.
So I think about everything is return on investment. If I am spending so much time calculating return on investment that it's taking away from the work I need to be doing,
sure,
I've taken it too far.
Yep.
I don't calculate return on investment on every single thing my team does. It's
Okay.
not worth it. It's not worth it. But I think about projects like, you know, that call center one I mentioned earlier, $6 million. That pays for my team for the year.
Yes.
If I do
and
5 or 10 of those a year,
Yeah.
then I'm like, okay, I'm not going to worry about measuring the ROI of everything else. I've already proved our worth and more.
Mm-hmm.
If you still want to question us and you want me to start spending my time measuring some of the smaller stuff, I mean, okay, we can, but I don't think that's what you want to do. The other thing, so I decide, let me first start by covering my costs and then decide how much more time is worth it to show what we've got.
Yep, makes
sense. Some
are
easier than others. The other thing I do that I think is different, and people will have opinions about this, and I think that's fine. I do not try under most circumstances. With a marketing algorithm, for example, it's a little bit easier. Maybe with a risk decisioning algorithm, it's a little bit easier. But by and large, so many of these projects, it's almost impossible to differentiate the contribution from the analytics from the contribution of the initiative overall.
Right.
So I don't try. I don't try. It doesn't matter. Because it also reinforces, I think, something that is detrimental to our way of working. This idea that the analytics are separate from the business initiative.
Right.
There's no such thing as an analytics initiative. There's only a business initiative.
Yes, wonderful.
So what is the value of the business initiative? Let's talk about that. Then I can decide we made a contribution to that or we didn't. It was minor, it was significant, the analytics was core to that initiative or it wasn't. But I don't want to, again, return on investment. Is it really worthwhile to spend time going, okay, well, this piece is analytics and that piece is yours? Yes. Or do we say we put our resources, our collective resources toward the right initiative? Yes or no?
And what you have just said there is music to my ears, because looking at it through just the lens of analytics doesn't make sense.
Nope.
Because you cannot quantify it down to that level. But when you quantify it for what it is, in terms of what you're supporting and what the benefits and the value is downstream, that's where the impact is felt. That's where the numbers are going to tell you yes or no, as you said. Did it work or not? Do we need to change tack and slightly tweak things? Because that's the whole test and learn thing. So I'm really, really thankful that you talked about it in the capacity of a business initiative, because so many times I am asked by either clients that I'm advising, oh, we want to track the ROI. I said, well, what does that mean to you? You tell me. If I can track it, I will do it. But what does that actually mean? Are you taking something in isolation? Are you looking? Do you want to look at every single tool that's put in and then trying to carve out what was that? If you want me to, and I think that's where people get stuck. So your example absolutely looks at it and dare I say it, I use the word holistically, because you're looking at it enterprise wide. You're looking at it, both, where you are in terms of your activity, upstream or downstream, whichever way it is. But that's the business value that you're looking at. And that's what I really appreciate about that specific way of looking at it. And hopefully,
there will be people who call that cheating. Like, oh, Kathleen, you're taking credit for what the business did.
but
The flip side is, okay, good. Then I'll tell you exactly what the potential value of an algorithm creates, and sit on this forever. But I'll tell you, I created $10 million and the business just didn't go after it.
Mm-hmm.
So, I mean, honestly, it's not about, I don't get paid a percentage. If I got paid a percentage, I might think differently about how I calculate.
That would be different. Absolutely.
I don't. So.
But I think that's the clarity people need, and I think it's a very good message to analysts out there who are told. So what was the ROI on that initiative? What did you make overall? What was the impact? But that's the other bit, which I think, as you said, in marketing it's easier, in risk modeling it's easier, maybe in certain analytics it might be slightly more abstract. And so therefore, it's probably less easier to understand the ROI from an analytical perspective. But in marketing, simple. You can know attribution. You can understand that. You can really drive the ROI through that. You can tweak it. You can understand where channel is more effective, blah, blah, blah. So I get it. Not everything is going to be able to give you that.
Big business initiatives are going to have a business case behind them.
Of course.
For the analytics. Now we're talking about the whole picture. That's easy. It's easy.
Yes. Yes. I really want to pick your brains around where I think a lot of people and a lot of analysts probably go to. You talked about algorithms and technology. And in this day and age, we are bombarded by use my application, you can plug it in and you'll get insights immediately. How do you combat that with the business? How do you work with the business in such a way, or your business partners, as you call them, to make those right decisions? Because it's always a shiny new thing. And how do you change their mind around that, or help them understand what's possible?
Oh, that is a great question. I've been very, very fortunate in that, there's fortunate, and then there's also maybe planful. I spend a lot of time building trust and credibility and relationships with those I support. Right. And what that means is when they get a call from somebody saying, hey, here's the next best answer, they will call me or they will point that individual in my direction. And I appreciate that very much because there are a plethora of tools out there.
Yes.
Most of which my business partners will never actually put hands on. I'm the one who's going to use them.
Sure, of course.
And there's that understanding. And so, it comes, I don't, because I have those relationships in place, that really hasn't been much of an issue for me. One of the things I do talk to my partners about is, let's talk about what is really great about this tool. So there are a few that I will mention by name, not as a way of advocating for them. I'm not endorsing anyone, but just to create some familiarity. There's a tool called Data Robot.
Okay.
I like Data Robot a lot. And I am not sure exactly how Data Robot positions themselves. Is it a tool for trained data scientists?
Right.
Or is it a tool that turns anybody into a data scientist?
I see. Okay. If
we're talking about it as a tool for trained data scientists, I love it. It's like giving, a high school student a calculator. You're not making them add up 5-digit numbers by hand anymore. You're letting them use a calculator because they know what it means to add and subtract.
Sure.
That's all it is, right? Instead of lines and lines of code to create some algorithm, it is like it's automated, but the output has to be interpreted.
Absolutely.
The context has to be understood. I think tools like that are fantastic because they speed up the process. They take away more of the tedious work that I have to go through. But I think it's really, really dangerous to say, good, anybody is a data scientist now. I compare that to the fact that I know how to push buttons and flip switches. You do not want me flying your plane because
No
I
way.
don't know how to fly. So just because I know how to push buttons and say autopilot, put on, no, you do not want me flying your plane. You do not want somebody who is not trained in the fundamentals of model development using Data Robot to build your models. But it is a great, great shortcut for people who know it. Reporting is a little bit different. It used to be called reporting. Then it was called real-time analytics. Then it was called data democratization. Then it was called automated analytics, these sorts of things. It's all just reporting. It's dynamic reporting, but it's reporting. The reality is analytics is special because it can answer questions that nobody has ever thought to ask before. You cannot pre-program that. So while there is incredible usefulness, and I like some of the newer technologies that are coming out like ThoughtSpot and Cuddle for this, business thinks, oh, good, we're going to get this Tableau dashboard, put everything in there. The dashboard becomes way overcomplicated. They can no longer use it. Now you need somebody whose job it is to manage the Tableau dashboard, or they say, now I have all these dashboards. I need a summary dashboard for my dashboards, right? And so it's just, it's overwhelming.
Yeah, that, and I talk about the dashboard graveyard because I've seen so many just end up in no use. But anyway, carry on.
Instead of like, oh, here's this new question we're asking ourselves, we're going to go somewhere with it. Oh, I'll build you a dashboard for that. Well, that's not, unless you're going to ask that same question over and
all
over
the time.
there's really no point. So, I like some of the newer technologies, ThoughtSpot and Cuddle, that have natural language processing built in. The partner can actually
can actually do it themselves.
Love that. But here's the bigger thing there, right? Even with a dashboard, I talk to my partners, whose job is it to study it? How frequently? Why are they studying it? What are they expected to do with the information? I can put the dashboard out there and then you'll still never know the answer to the question because nobody's about to look at it. Everything has to be integrated with the business. No technology solution is ever going to be your silver bullet. You're just never going to get away with removing the human intelligence of interpreting and doing.
Absolutely, I agree. So I know we're running out of time. I want to speak to you about your work and your experience of women in analytics, and I know that you're a big advocate. And I know that there, certainly through my experience and my wife, who's now retraining and becoming, and she loves data, she loves visualization, but really from a business sense. What would you say to young girls, women who want to change careers? What would you tell them are the things that they need to do if they want to get into data? And you always talk about mindset, which I love. What are the top three things, or a number of things that you would say these are the things that you need to set yourself up with in order to get into data?
Surprisingly, these are hard questions to answer because, of course, I only have the experience of being a woman in analytics.
Of course,
I have nothing to compare it to. So I think about things like, yes, the algorithms are important. Yes, the statistics are important. Get some hard training. If you don't have that, get some of that hard training. But do not underestimate your ability to connect with other people. Do not underestimate the value of emotional intelligence and an ability to communicate in a productive and open way. There is so much that is generally associated with, being female. That is actually an asset to this role.
Yes.
And so, there are challenges about being a woman in corporate that are probably not different, being in analytics versus any other domain.
Sure.
Those all still exist. We walk a fine line. Are we assertive or are we aggressive? Are we smart or are we conceited? Are we a leader or are we bossy? All of that we still have to contend with. Part of the reason why I'm so out front is because I do think representation matters.
Yes,
I was
it does.
fortunate. My mother was a math teacher. I went to a women's college, and I remember walking into my first calculus class because I didn't think I was going to study math. So I walked into my first calculus class, and there were a female professor, 48 other women, one guy who was at a college down the street at Haverford, it didn't fit into his schedule. And I walked in and I saw this room and I was like, oh, well, why couldn't I literally that day, why couldn't I do this? This is amazing. We're all here together.
Yeah.
And it was, that was a game changer for me.
Wow.
And, and then there's just this something about, I've always been bold, and I've always been, maybe I've got a little bit of blinders on, the stuff that's happening on the side. I don't know. I just know where I'm going.
Yes.
I may not be that smart, but I know how to push a boulder uphill, and it's happening. I made the decision and it's happening, so,
yeah.
But I think representation matters. And we as women have to begin to really value and appreciate those other qualities that are often not highlighted. Everybody highlights the technical. Well, technical is not going to get you very far.
And I think you're absolutely right, because from our discussion, and there's three things that I think I've taken away, which I love discussions that I learn all the time. And for me, that's, I soak it up, and every time I have another view of how I need to behave, how my team needs to behave, how we all need to be working together. But I really like the three things that you said: build trust, get that credibility, and build relationships. And if that isn't the antithesis of what they are telling analysts to do these days, I think that's phenomenal. And I also believe in what you said earlier, is probably get yourself a mentor. It sounds like you had the right mentor just at the right time in order to adapt your thinking. And not everybody will be as lucky as you were, but there's always a manager out there who's going to be that one, who's going to be the one that stays with you.
You see on LinkedIn. It doesn't even have to be a manager. Talk to the people you see on LinkedIn. Talk to the people you see on YouTube. I love it when people contact me through LinkedIn and say, I just want to have a conversation. I want to know what you think about this. And it doesn't happen nearly as often as one might think. And, to date, the numbers have been such that I've been able to say yes to every single person. And I get a lot out of it too. I love those conversations. I find them energizing. I learn. I love hiring newer, younger talent because they are much more up on the, current software and technology.
Oh, yes.
So, I mean, they're the ones keeping me
on your toes.
Yeah.
So look, I think final view is just I think, your final comments for analysts who are and data scientists and those people who are looking to get, their teeth stuck into data. What are the three things that they should be thinking about today and for the future?
You have to know statistics. You have to know statistics. Knowing how to program algorithms is not the same thing as knowing the fundamentals. You've got to know the fundamentals.
Okay.
Do not shortchange the softer side. Building relationships, being able to connect with another human being is absolutely critical. And approach the job with some humility. I know I can help my partners reach higher and get there faster, but I have to do it from a position of wanting to be of service, not servitude, but to be of service.
Fantastic. Kathleen Maley, this has been one of the best shows that I've done, and it's been a delight to have you on. And really, I hope one day, we can have you on again and we can talk about other things. But this has been a delight. Thank you so much. And I must say, I can hear the birds singing and I can see the water behind you. And I want to jump into that now, but
It's a wonderful office. I'm so glad I could do the show from here today. And I have loved it just as much. I'm so glad that we've gotten to know each other, and I will do this anytime you want to bring me on.
Great. Thank you so much and enjoy your day.